Hey everybody, Sebastian here with Lost Hombres, episode 29. And I'm here to just talk to you guys today about some new concepts that I've been engaging with, things that have been coming up for me, and some really exciting topics that I believe that would contribute to one's understanding of how kind of the universe operates on a spiritual level, and really dive into some topics that have been coming up for me recently and the way I've been processing, understanding the world, talking with God, or at least like understanding God's messages. So that's been really interesting, and just kind of being able to have a different take on the world, especially with some of the stories and what they're representing and how to understand them on a like different fundamental level. So, anyways, a lot of things have been going on last couple weeks, especially just my understanding on the universe. And one of the things that I find fascinating and something that's just been really interesting from my perspective is it dawned on me the other day, the way the mechanism of uh, how Dungeons and Dragons is very reminiscent to how the universe that we live in operates. And one of the cool things about this game that I've always found interesting, especially with this kind of philosophy, is this idea that Dungeons and Dragons does not require any actual like game, any actual like board or anything. It's all can be imagination based. So yes, you can have like the sense of the little character sheets, and so those character sheets can be valuable, but the whole game itself has nothing to do with having to worry about the character sheet. So like the character sheet is just for you to have a reference of your person. So it's a good way to like know who you are. And so it gives you like a foundation of grounding, but the entire game itself can be played in a imaginative land, like just the idea of, okay, we're here and this is what it looks like and this is what you're. And so the uniqueness is that everybody that is at the game is going to interpret each of these types of things in their own way. So if I say we're at a castle, even if I describe it, each one of these people is going to have their own unique way of interpreting what this castle would look like, where they would put all the pieces, where they would imagine this, different character would look like, and what they would be doing and how they would. So each one of them is going to bring their own unique flavor into this campaign, right? And so what's interesting about Dungeons and Dragons is, again, like it's an imaginative game, but it requires a lot of focus. So you also have to be thinking like, okay, like how far is this thing from where I'm at, or what kind of armor are they wearing, and how much damage can I do, and just a lot of different things that go into having to consider how you're going to approach a different situation. So whatever situation you're running into, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, you'll know, okay, I have to plan it this way, I have to plan it that way. And so whatever way you end up planning it is going to lead to more outcomes, lead to more challenges, lead to more problems, same way that it would in this world. So when you go apply for a job or a new place and you're trying to like figure out, what I'm going to do in this new place, you need to bring new skill sets, you need to bring new abilities, you have to use, different like conversational skills, different outcomes with different personalities. So you're always having to evolve in the real time. And that's how this game also works, because it's based on imagination. There's a lot of freedom that comes along in this game, because again, you can kind of play by the rules that you have, as long as it's within the limits of your imagination. So focus and imagination are really important when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, the fundamentals. And this same principle also applies when you look at things like the real world. And so we also have the freedom to evaluate and understand the world in our own unique way. And again, like when we are all telling our own story, even though we all witness the same event, we all have our unique perspective on this specific event, right? So there's always going to be a layer of uniqueness within this realm, because we all have to share this same unified realm together, okay? Same way in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Okay, so let's break down how can we look at it even further. Well, there's a person called the Dungeon Master, and the Dungeon Master is super important when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. And the reason is they are literally creating the entire premise of the story. They are deciding what characters are involved, the backstory, like the entire premise of this existence is being put there before you, right? So in order to go out and enjoy this world already had to have something going on so that you have something to enjoy, right? So you had to have like different clans and different things and different battles and different whatever. All these things had to happen in order to give you context in the world that you're being born into, right? So this world that you're coming into, we'll call it your patch update or whatever. Like the environment you're coming into has a lot to do with, again, like whatever the dungeon master is creating for you, right? So you're creating a character, right? Or you're getting to play a character. Okay, you're getting the opportunity to play a character in this magical world. And when you come into the world, the DM is going to be choosing a lot of the things. So when you go explore an inn, you don't decide what's inside of the inn. You get to experience what's inside of the inn. The same thing. So the dungeon master, they already have things planned out. They have to know everything about everything. And the more they understand the world, the more enjoyable this world becomes. The more detail the world has, the more things it like has like little moments and then these little fun little coincidences that are magical, right? Like characters that show up again or adventures that were foreshadowed because of previous events, right? And all these things are playing out because the dungeon master, when they do their job very well, allows you to almost play out a book in a real life, like real time situation. So when you play a campaign, you're literally playing out a story, right? And this story is based on, again, your like ability to work with others and like develop like different scenarios and different challenges and overcome them. And so you work in your party, you work within your system, you work with your strengths and your weaknesses to overcome situations. And so this same philosophy, you can apply it again to the real world. So when you're out there living in your world, in your environment, and things come up, challenges come up, you work with your party, work within the system using your strengths and weaknesses, right? Understanding each other so that you all can rise to the challenge as a collective, right? And overcome these challenges. And so these magical worlds are very similar to the type of environments we live in now in a very magical sense as well, right? And so again, when we look at like a dungeon master who again has to know all the background, sustain the story, keep consistency, like they have to help run the machine that gets to be played for the others, right? So they're like literally doing like a juggling, right? They're literally like creating a story so that the person that's experiencing it gets to enjoy to the full capacity. And there is a fundamental difference too in being the dungeon master and being a player. And there's many times that the dungeon master wishes they could just go back to being a player. Right. And it does happen that they wish they're like, man, it'd be so cool if I could just play the game because I have to hold it all together. And then the players don't like the campaign sometimes, and then they want to like kill their character off because they're bored of it, or people start like not wanting to show up to the campaign, so then you can't get to the next chapter because people aren't showing up, and then you need. And so imagine a world where like you have God and God is like, creating this campaign, and people stop like showing up, people stop being interested, people stop caring about the campaign, and you still have to hold it together because there's still some people that are showing up, and you're like, well, why did I make this whole world if like people don't want to show up, so like as long as people are showing up, the world's sustained. Like, hey, cool, people are down. It's when people stop showing up that the world gets cold, boring, dull, lame, like repetitive. And we know this in video games, we know this in any board game, we know this. When it gets too repetitive and there's no reward anymore and it's not vibrant, it's not interesting anymore, there's no challenges to overcome, everything's just now like boring, repetitive, the same. It's a grind. Like games that become grinds are not attractive to players, and they're very boring, and they create very toxic environments, right? It's very pay to win. And well, life is kind of turning into that. We used to have more of a Dungeons and Dragons type of environment, and now we're kind of playing in like a pay to win environment or like a battle pass environment. Like I feel like work now is like a battle pass. Like you got to do like the basics to get like the reward and get. And so we're living in a battle pass versus like in the old times where it was more like an MMO where you were open world, you could run around, do your whatever thing, and get with your party, and it was a different game. And right now we're in a grindy game. We're in a grindy game with loot boxes. And so I think society, the way that humans decide to operate within a society, is showing you where they're, what kind of game they're deciding to play, because they're giving into a system in the end, right? Depending on what that system is. So the system before used to be the natural order of things, right? Like these wonderful, like magical moments, like the arcana and like the mystery of the world and the connection with the divine, and like being able to cast spells and understand magic and like get to a higher level of states of consciousness where you can do like divine things and resonate with the universe that you're surrounded by. And now instead of doing all that, people are so nervous, they're so depressed, they're so out of balance and so whacked out that they can't enjoy the game anymore, the process. They can't enjoy what was divine once about this world, right? This world was full of adventures and expression and love and compassion and existence and appreciation for the world, right? Appreciation for the things that were made by this divine, creature, thing, entity, whatever, person, source, right? Light. So the thing that created this universe, right, created a universe where it was very fulfilling to begin with. It had everything it needed. We had all the things that we wish, like, oh man, I wish I could talk, like hang out with animals. I wish I could just like not have to go to work every day. Like that's kind of how it used to be. Like that was living. Everything that you're like, man, I hate all these things. The only reason you're trapped there is because you have the idea that these things are necessary, and you don't seem to see that all the stuff around you is actually not in your best interest. It actually creates worry, creates frustration, creates disconnection, creates envy. This artificial life that we have constantly is putting pressure on us to feel a negative experience. And as I've told you guys before, living in hell is when you're in too much hot or too much cold. And so, whether you're wrathful towards others or you're depressed about your lack, you're always living in an excess of too much or too little. And so, it's always off balance. And as long as you can remain off balance, you cannot find peace in your heart. That's why peace in your heart only exists when there's peace in your mind and body. But if you have any kind of chaos in your mind and body, you cannot have peace in your heart. It is not possible, because your heart is a direct reflection on the peace that you have within your system. That's why the spirit, the heart, the soul, at the end of the day, is the thing that is going to tell you what is affecting you, right? So if you start talking, like one of the things I see a lot in patients, and it's good for them to be aware, is when they start talking faster and they're always trying to explain themselves, and they're like that pressure of like, yeah, like that pressure is a stress mechanism. It's a lack of confidence. These people struggle with self respect and self love. They are trying to either prove themselves that like they are this thing that they are, or disprove themselves that they're not this thing that they're not, instead of just being who they are. And they get stuck in these processes of think, because they're trying to think their way out of something that they don't feel comfort with. And that's really their true issue. And so the more they gain confidence, the easier it is to cope with some of these challenges that are coming up for them, especially for discomforts or self esteem problems, because maybe they're lacking in self respect, self care, independence, future, and these negative stressors are going to create imbalance in them. And that's going to cause them to talk faster and worry more. Then you have people that have a hard time talking, and they just never can let any words out. And so that process is the same issue where, again, they're having a hard time letting go. They're having a hard time trusting. They're having a hard time processing. So, on one hand, it's like someone's trying to carry all the weight, and that's why they have to let go. And on one hand, they're like carrying all the weight this way, like they're dragging weight with them, and they're not letting it go. And so in both ways, they got to let go of the thoughts, or they got to let go of the feelings so that they can be. So they're not too high and they're not too low. They're just enough, just present enough. And that's going to help them achieve enlightenment, nirvana, zen, whatever you want to call it, divine state, magical state. When you finally align your masculine and feminine energy, you get to really experience divinity. So this all stuff again applies to Dungeons and Dragons. Why? Because in Dungeons and Dragons, you have different classes, you have different like abilities, you have like different stat points and different things that you calculate, and all these things that you calculate in the stat points and everything else. All these things can be traced back to things that we experience here, like when you're talking about someone's agility, or are they able to wield a two-handed sword, or what's their intellect, strength, stamina. All these like stat points, they have basis in reality. And so they're just copying what we would consider reality, right? They're copying the words that we explain every day, and they're just adding a number value to it. And that already exists because God speaks in numbers. Like everything is calculated in numbers. That's why like even like the idea of pi is kind of funny, because pi is a perfect, right, shape, like a circle, but it's an imperfect number. Or is it a perfect number? Because it never ends. So it's like a fractal. So it's like God put a fractal right in front of your face, like, here you go. Ha, that's a fractal. That's an infinite number. Isn't that funny? Keep calculating. Yeah. Yep. Still there, still going. Go. Yep. I mean, they literally have theories like, do you guys think this number like never ends? And people are like, no, it never ends. And they keep trying to find the end. They want to see if they can find the end, but all they ever find is more broken systems, because it's like the joke. Like it's like God's like, I told you guys can't beat me. We like look, the number that you can divide pi by, right? That infinite number as an example, right? Humans don't even know all the numbers because you can't. You can't. You can't know infinite. Only the infinite knows infinite. And that's because it's just a part of the system of the programming. So it's already programmed into the system. It already has infinite. That is like the fractal. That's the ability to create infinitely. If you zoom into something, you'll just keep saying, oh, wow, it's just getting more complicated and complicated and never ending. And so that's why, because it's the infinite, right? And we can't create those things. We can discover them. They are already created. And so we're not creating them. We're discovering these things. And so math is not created, it's discovered. So if we're discovering reality and we're discovering that reality has a lot of consistency, well, then we can measure reality. And that's the numbers that were given to us. We didn't invent them. We didn't invent how big an atom is. We only discovered the size of the atom that we based our own like numbers on, which is even funny because all these numbers and all these things come from astrology, come from like some deeper thing. And hello, like that, the zodiacs and all these things, like for not believing in something for people, we also have a lot of things within the world that is based off these things. Like when we have letters and numbers, they're based off the stars. They're based off the gods. And yet people are like, oh, what is this? But yet here we are, like literally speaking in their language. These are invented language. We didn't go like, all right, guys, fresh start. Fresh start. Okay, just making it up as we go, based on nothing. It's just that's why you don't make it up, but everything we have is based off the stars. We already are speaking in their language. We speak in the zodiac languages. We also understand the zodiac numbers, and so because we speak in and live in these numbers, it's a way that we are appreciating the gods in another way, or appreciating like existence in another way. So again, D&D is another example for how these things work. So we got magical abilities and we have physical. Okay, so let's break it down to this. We have spirit or mana, anima, whatever you want to call it, right? And then we also have HP, health. Okay, so we have health and mana. Now we can break it down to, we have the physical body, all right, mind, we have matter, our body, and then we have mind, right? We have thought, we have the metaphysical, and so this is spirit. So we can look at these as like different things, and depending on what's happening is going to depend, like, can I do this activity or thing without thinking, right? Am I able to just like brain dead through this, right? So that would be like a stamina HP type of situation, right? This is a physical thing. Now we have spiritual things where might require more cognition or more thought or more presence or more patience, and so you may have to use your spiritual like calmness, like your spiritual strength, right? And so that's a different type of stamina. That's a different type of thing. It's like with spell casting and studying, right? It requires a certain type of energy. It's not a physical energy, it's a metaphysical energy. But it also can drain you. And so that draining that you feel studying or working on yourself or learning how to access magic is part of the recovery process, which even in D&D, when you cast a lot of spells in a day, you have to take a long rest or a rest period to activate that spell casting again. So this same process is with people. Like, you run in a point in your day where you're just kind of tired of talking. You're like, I don't fucking care anymore. I'm done. And that process of reaching the end is when you ran out of mana, or when you're done with a certain type of, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm tired of talking. Like, dealing with aggressive people. So that's spiritual warfare, right? If you're always dealing with dicks and assholes and people that just don't care, people in that demonic energy, it's draining the fuck out of you. So when you're dealing with people in demonic energy, you're like, bro, you're so fucking annoying. Because they complain, they whine, they victimize themselves. They look at you like you're a problem just for being yourself, and they want to like kind of like make you look like you're an issue, like you're like proud, or like you have too much pride or whatever. And they try to victimize themselves by looking at all the positives you have, which again just drains your what? Your soul, your energy, right? And so again, this is a type of, battle that requires that spiritual energy. So in some end it's physical, in some end it's spiritual. And so you have spellcasters. These are people that use their words, right, to either like cast blessing, curses, like, break spells. Like, think about court, right? You have like a judge, and like you have two lawyers, and they're using words to like defend each other and like, cast doubt. Literally, they're casting doubt. They're casting their judgment, right? They're like deflecting, and you're using, like, for example, the Fifth Amendment, which is silence. So you're able to silence yourself, literally, like able to silence yourself, because your tongue is your sword and it can hurt you. That means like when you speak, it can actually negatively impact you as well. And so that being your weapon is another way to kind of understand magic and how it affects the person. And so, what you want to understand with magic too, especially with spell casting, is that when you understand that, you need to recover your mana, right? Water would be your mana potion. Like, water is, helps your parched throat. It helps you like feel better. It helps like with headaches. It helps with thinking, right? What happens if you don't have enough water? It's hard to think. You get a headache, right? And so water is like drinking a mana potion, and it helps you with your spirits. Even seeing an oasis in a desert can lift spirits and bring like positivity. It didn't physically impact you, but you will spiritually feel a shift just being around the presence of water. So water is kind of like our own mana pot right now. And I would say health pots, or you could say, are things like the green drink in the morning or something like that. Or you could say it's like when you're drinking medicine or something, just to help you get more health in your life. But yeah, like, these things already exist. So you have the ability to spell cast. You have the ability to, have confidence, and confidence is like a shield, or I like to call it faith. See, if your faith is your shield, right? And so then you have your sword, which is the truth, and your truth will cut through the darkness. And your words are the same thing as having a sword, so your words can cut through the darkness. So it's the same process or concept. Like, your tongue is your weapon, and so it's the same. It's the same thing as having a sword, because words can hurt too. Words can cut deep, like literally, and that's because you're cutting them with the truth. You're cutting through their darkness. And so when you have a lot of strength, when you have a lot of confidence, it cuts right through people that are not confident. So people that have self-esteem issues won't be able to stand their ground, and you'll like see right through their whatever illusion, call it, right? So that's part of how the spell casting part works. So, and then you have the belt, right? The belt of righteousness. So when you are firm in your groundedness of like, hey, I'm doing this for the right reason, the righteous reason, like just like a belt would hold you in position, hold your pants, hold your grounding. Like it's the same process. It just kind of holds you together, right? It's that tightness that you feel so you don't feel so loose. Like it's my like, hey, this is my righteousness, right? And then the last part's like the armor, you call it like God's blessing. So like you would have like a spiritual armor. So you can either have like magical armor, like a mage having magical armor to keep away the bad spells, or you could also have like a crusader where you literally wear armor and that blessing is like what protects you. And that's like when you're living at your highest capacity, you're like having self-actualization. That's like having a blessing coming upon you. And that blessing is what protects you, right? So you have your shield, which is your faith. You have your sword, which is like your truth, like, cutter, like your truth shower. And then you have your belt, which just kind of holds you tight together and keeps you grounded. And then you have your armor, which is like a blessing. And like this is kind of how D&D works too, right? And so you have the spellcaster and you have melee and you have hybrids, which can do a little bit of both. I like to consider myself like maybe like a hybrid, right? Where it's like I have a lot of physical abilities and a lot of physical stamina, but I also have a lot of spiritual stamina too. And so I would see myself more like a paladin or a cleric if I was to choose a character, right? And I think everybody has their own like types of archetypes and styles. Like some people, you could call them a druid, right? Why? Because they are more based on nature and they are more based on like connecting with the earth, right? And I think just everybody has like their role in what they can do and what they're good at in the same way in this world where we all are born to be different because we're all meant to be a part of this greater story, right? And so the way you look at life now, this isn't how life has to be lived. And you know this because every single culture before us never lived like us before. So it's like every culture is going to be different. Like 200 years from now, what we call America is might not even be America anymore. So it's hard to tell. Like how do we really know? We don't. Like what if there's just a drought that just happens and like there is no more water and it just stops and there's just no more water and it's just that's it. Like what do you do? Like it's gonna, even if we get wiped out halfway, right? Again, like that's a result of human beings not working together to get their shit together, right? Because theoretically, if we all worked as a team and we truly cared about our species and the earth and connecting at our highest frequency so that we can all connect to the divine, and then if we connect with the divine, we can connect with other, beings that are also connected to the divine. But if we can't even connect with our own divine, how, like, in order to connect to other divines, right? We have to connect with those frequencies and their spiritual frequencies. Okay, like magic, right? Where I can feel someone else's energy and I can tell what they want. Sometimes I can even read their mind, like they want this and they want that. How do you tell an AI how that works? How do you explain that feeling that you get? And that same feeling, that spiritual energy that you were experiencing, if enough human beings got together and started channeling our spiritual energy, that same energy that's like deja vu, like, what's that? If we all got together and really started to cultivate it, we literally could rise the energy to connect to other planes, other places. Because again, what I'd like to tell people is if the light is moving, something's telling the light where to go. Everything that you see on the screen is being told to be put there by what? The technology that you don't see. And so if that part didn't exist, like you don't see, without the screen, you don't actually see what the computer is doing. Like you don't see that. It's a little thing that happens. They have to make it show you what it's doing. Because on like a physical level, that's not what's happening. It's just, right? But you in this world see it as dash blah 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 zero blah 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 all these little whatever commands, right? but that command is based on a physical transaction that's happening. Okay. And so again, there's something going on beyond that is guiding this thing, right? That is showing it where to go. This is how it functions. So something programmed and is guiding this light somewhere, and it is telling the light how to operate. So it knows the light has an intelligence in the sense that it knows exactly how to stay a light. It's programmed that way, right? So it's been programmed to remain in that state of existence, just like we've been programmed to live in this state of existence. And if we were to remove ourselves and put ourselves in a different type of state, like the like space or whatever, that would not be conducive to our state of existence. So we would not operate well in that environment because that's not what we were. That we don't come from that environment. So we're like forcing ourselves into a new environment that's not conducive to like what we were created to be in, right? So again, D&D, great way to understand how magic works in this world. That spell casting is real, physical is real, stamina points, whatever you want to call it. When you combine these things, you get to really understand that hey, we have some abilities and powers in this world, and so we can actually access our divinity through our heart and our balanced state. And so, yeah, that's something I thought I would share. I thought was really interesting of how, the concept of God can work within like Dungeons and Dragons, and even the concept like in Dungeons and Dragons, people have different sub gods, right? And so they had gods like, the god of rain, or like the god of like sorcery, or the god of magic, or the god of like the warlocks, whatever. Like the god of, there's like different types of gods that have different divinities, right? Different beliefs and whatever, different practices that you have to follow to activate them, right? So there was nothing necessarily bad with having those belief systems when they don't include like doing horrible things to what the natural order is. So as long as the natural order kind of like flows with whatever your belief system is, it's cool, man, because that's programmed already into the system, right? So a lot of angels and things like that, and whatever negative energies, they're all based on things that are actually in the system. So like the seven deadly sins, right? That's not man-made in the sense that like we didn't invent the feelings that we have. What that is that we associated a name to something we already experienced, a behavior that wasn't taught to us. These are things that people already innately have in them, the potential to have, right? So these are potentials because everything that has one side has to have another, right? But again, that doesn't mean that makes you who you are. It's just it gives you the opportunity to see all, right? In order to see all, to have an all-seeing eye, you have to see all the horrible shit people can do. The difference is you don't have to act on horrible shit. People that act on horrible shit is like a whole other level of fucked up, which is why we're in the situation we are now, because people started worshiping like entities that wanted them to sacrifice their children and shit. And like, obviously the ultimate creator who is giving us souls, is giving us opportunities to live, was like, what the hell? Like, why are you guys all killing each other? I already gave you like enough everything. Like, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? Like, I've even given you the ability to like connect to the divine. I've given you the ability to like look outside of yourself and do all kinds of cool stuff. I've given you like so much freedom. Like, I gave you all the freedom. Like, literally, like, what do you want to do? Here you go. Yeah, like the world has to be held together, but like there's all these laws are man-made. Like the only laws that aren't are the ones that are related to the universe, that are universal laws. Only the universal laws apply to all men, right? But man-made laws only apply to some men. And well, again, that goes back to protection and binding. If you're low class, you get bound to things. They like to bind you to the law. And if you're high class, you get protected by the law. So again, it goes back to witchcraft and spell casting. And so our entire culture is built off spell casting. I mean, grammar. The word grammar is based off grimoire, which is a spell casting book. So says a lot about the English language, that the English language was invented for spell casting. So it is not the most friendly language. I'll say that the least. It is a very controlling and aggressive language. I'll call it that. Very possessive language. So I guess you could blame kind of like the belief system of owning things as built into the language, really. It's also a language of confusion, like babble, because there's a lot of mix of words. And so sometimes it's hard to know, like, what does that even mean? And so they have like very strange words for things to confuse people sometimes because they sound like they would be one thing but they're not. And then even the way they're spelled is confusing sometimes. Like certain languages, the way the word sounds is the way it's spelled and not in English. There's like rules and fakeness and like there's this exception and it's like a secret language to some extent. It's like the people that know, the people that don't know. And it's like you can tell who was raised in the culture by how they spell words, right? Because if you're just spelling because of the way it sounds, you're going to show what class you are. So if you don't know the tricks, you're already at a subclass. So it's like, again, the English language is a very like messed up language in the first place. It's very controlling language. And the language you use does impact the way you operate in the world. Like there is an impact on the way we communicate and how words can be presented and the impact that the way those words are presented can have. So there's just a lot of like little things to consider when it comes to language. So yeah, a couple things. Yeah, God reminds me a lot of like D&D, so that's been interesting. Spell casting again, we were talking about right now how the court systems have kind of like a thing with that right now. Even sentencing, they bind your soul to a sentence, which is whatever they say, and then say so and so you are sentenced to and then period, which is literally like a sentence and a period. So and it's by someone in like a robe at a high court sentencing you. And all the like literally all the laws are made up anyways. So all these laws are just, we invented them. So that's again living within the system that we invented. We're helping sustain a fake world. Like all this is man-made. We decided these laws. We decided to do this. Like as a collective, we are deciding to give our lives to the greater system of the made up one that doesn't actually offer you much, but makes you think it does. If you're the right class of person, you're very well protected. So yeah, we're living in a very I guess you'd call it black magic kind of environment where they try to trick you. A lot of trickery, a lot of negative, a lot of, well, I got you, so you owe me. If I can fool you, I deserve it. That's the world we live in right now. If you didn't notice it was happening, well, you just should just stop noticing because it's easier just to stop noticing. Yeah, how about that? Just stop noticing, and we'll go from there. That actually happens a lot in families. That happens a lot in at work. Just turn the cheek, but not in the fighting way, in the confronting way. So they definitely want you to turn the cheek, but they don't want to do it for fighting. Okay, they want you to give up. And that's the way they want you to turn the cheek, is to give up. So yeah, we're dealing with a very interesting environment right now. Um, Another thing I've been thinking about lately is this way of understanding how we got to living in hell and how we got kicked out of paradise. And I want you guys to really think about this for a second because it's something that has come to my attention. And it's this idea that we look at Adam and Eve, and there's the story of Eve eating the apple and this apple process and what happens when Eve eats the apple. And I've been talking to God about it, and this is what God told me about it. So he explained it to me that the process of wanting to know, right? The wanting to know is already a sinful thing in the sense of this. It brings you to hell, right? Why? Because anytime you're trying to look for knowledge, when you are actively looking for knowledge, right? You're actually just reinforcing your own bias. Okay. So the more that you look for knowledge, the more you will find things that validate you. But that doesn't mean it's the truth. And that's where people get sucked into this. Okay. They think that the more they know and the more they can prove something, the more valid they are in something, right? And this is actually the opposite of what is actually valid. Okay. So instead of looking for answers, you will find answers in being patient and looking through several different informations. So as you process all the different ideas from different sources, different philosophies, different beliefs, you will start to see the truth. And that is why patience is so necessary if you want to be in paradise. Because if you want to remain in paradise, you have to be patient for God to show you how the world works. If you want to know how everything works, the only way to do that is to allow the divine to teach you as you gain patience. If you continue to seek knowledge, and you continue to look for it, you will only find more misery because you keep having to validate your existence. And so think about it this way. When Adam and Eve, after the apple was eaten, they went and ran away and hid. They went to go get away. All right. Again, living in hell. And why do I mean that? Because the hell they're living in has to do with the fact that they keep trying to seek knowledge, which is just making them miserable, instead of being open to understanding knowledge by receiving different sources until something makes sense out of all of it. And that's where patience is super important. And it's remembering that you don't learn things when you want to, you learn things when you're ready to, because it just has an epiphany, it just happens. So when somebody experiences an epiphany, they could be cooking rice, they could be eating a hot dog, they could be just, I don't know, watching a different show, like a completely different, and they could be like daydreaming. And all of a sudden during the daydream, they're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? Or maybe they hear something in a video that has nothing to do with what they were talking about. And then all of a sudden something clicks and it just makes perfect sense. That is how learning actually works. Okay. And again, it had nothing to do with seeking it. It had to do with being ready for the opportunity to gain that knowledge, to gain that understanding. And so when they are trying to find out something, they want to find out for themselves, they will only find that over time they will find misery, because that's not how it works. The only way it works is to be patient. That is it. And so the second you lose your patience, you are no longer allowed in the garden. The second that you regain patience and understand that, hey, I just need to let you teach me. I just need to let you show me. I just need to let you, like, help me understand the world that I'm living in. That's when true change starts to happen. That's when nirvana is reached. That's when you can get back into the kingdom instead of, again, being a disappointment and running away and hiding and trying to justify your behavior. Just accept, say, hey, I really don't know everything, and I don't want to keep trying to find my truth. I just am open to knowing the truth. And when you're open to knowing the truth of the world, you start to really gain true insight, true understanding, real deep fundamental understanding, ancient knowledge type of understanding, right? You start to see symbols and you're like, I know what that means. I understand that. You start to see mathematics differently. You start to see alchemy differently. You start to see science in a new way. Everything. You start to see the world in the way you feel it should have been, the most naturalistic way. Seeing math, science, all these things coming from the world itself, the actual world, not the world that you have been programmed to see, but the world that you forgot to see, because it's right there in front of you. And this is what I remind people all the time, that peace is not out there. It's right here. And it's been here the entire time. And every time you forget, where's my peace? You're just losing an opportunity to regain it and be with it again. And that's a process. It's very challenging because, again, a lot of people have been programmed not to believe that they are peace, not to believe in themselves, not to believe that their belief systems are just as valid as anybody else's belief systems, in the sense that If you truly understand the world and you truly create your belief system based on the reality of how things are, then you will feel so comfortable in who you are that it doesn't even matter their perspective because you're already where you want to be in your mind, in your body, in your soul. So it's super important to remind yourself to stay present, right? To stay in the moment because that's when you reach your state of nirvana again. That's when you reach your state of present being, heaven, whatever you want to call it. So whenever you get to find that happy place, no, actually, no, don't call it the happy place. Call it the tranquil place. Yeah, happiness is a fleeting moment. Ignore that. Actually, the happiness is a trap. Don't even like that's actually our problem with our society is happiness. So like there's way too much focus on that particular emotion, and that emotion is not what you believe it to be. It's a deception. Like it only like happiness literally leads to misery, and that's not a bad thing. It's a necessary thing because it helps you appreciate, but in too much it's unhealthy because you're just happy, sad, or suffering, happy, suffer, happy, suffer, happy. And that sounds miserable. Instead of being happy, chill, sad, chill, happy, chill, sad, chill. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather just be chill instead of happy, 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 sad, happy, 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 sad. That's not necessary. Right there. Like, just enough. Not that sounds horrible. That sounds like a nightmare of a situation. That extreme, right? And that same frequency is what your like you could say your heart, right? High heart rate, low heart rate, high, or would you rather have it chill and sometimes up and down? And so we got to see ourselves as that same like energy, that same like flow, just like a stream of consciousness that you are, right? You're just a stream of consciousness. And so is your conscious like chill? Is it always high? Is it always low? Is it just like right there? And does it just, can it fluctuate a little bit, but always come back to what baseline? And so you guys see yourself as like a floating spirit. And it's like, okay, where's my spirit and what's the frequency like right now? What's the sensation that it's kind of going through? And that'll help you get some insight on how that works. So yeah, like another thing I've been thinking about too, and this is really important, the importance of understanding what femininity is and how relevant it is to what's happening right now in society and some of the problems that we're experiencing. And it's the idea that there is a like push towards everybody kind of being a hard ass, like work harder, do this, do that. And that's pushing towards that masculine stress energy, and people are forgetting like that like being like sensitive or like being more vulnerable or like being more like tired and it's okay is like an important part of like survival and like operation. And I can see a lot of women out there that struggle with their femininity, like letting go and like going with the flow, literally like just being chill, even with their voice and stuff. I see a lot of women with like ponytails, they're always tight, they're always wearing clothes. It's like very like aggressive and like very like hard or rough. And I see sometimes a lack of flow, right? And men too, trust me, I get it. Men they struggle in their ways as well. They are a lot, again, we're overly masculine, or there's men that are way overly on the like, I want to be sensitive, that they forget to, hey, like activate that masculine, like pull yourself up, get your life together, and have a duality of balance, right? The balanced self instead of an imbalanced self, right? A shattered self. So we want to make sure that we understand what feminine energy is. And it's again, it's the ability, like It's like that grandma. It's like, hey, how are you? Oh, I love it. That's great. How you been? How's It's that peace. It's a willow tree, right? You go out and you just land there and like that tree's been there for like ever, but it just receives you. It's just it's comforting. That tree brings you comfort. And that's the same idea of like feminine energy. Instead of like, hey, how are you? You good? And then in Mexican culture, it's like, ¿Cómo estás? Bien? ¿Ya comiste? It's very aggressive. It's very dominating. It's very domineering. And it's like, where's the like, hey, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cómo comiste bien? And that's not a bad thing. That's healthy. That's necessary. It helps both parties. It helps create a sense of comfort for everybody, right? It's alleviating for all. So we need to at times understand what feminine energy means so that we can appreciate it, because when people exhibit it, sometimes it's not appreciated. And what ends up happening is that they push further towards masculinity, and then both parties end up unhappy because there's too much strength and like too much like pushback, too much positive energy and not enough chill energy. So much stress that everyone starts to really react and burn out versus chill out and enjoy and just appreciate, right? So that's another thing that I want you guys to know is like feminine energy is super important, and being able to appreciate what it does for our society, our cultures, our overall personal development, like appreciating that energy is super important. And people that forget that that's an important part of society are doing people a disservice, because again, we're nowhere happier in life, we're no more connected in life. Families are more broken than ever. People are more depressed and stressed than ever. Why? Because they don't know how to operate the human vehicle. And the number one killer in the world is heart disease. And heart disease is a problem when you have nerves and you have blood problems, because your blood issues affect your heart. So your eating directly affects how your heart is operating, your diet, and all those things, the way you move your body, and also the way you stress your body. If you don't, work on your stress, you can poison yourself with negative types of hormones and different types of like negative chemicals that you produce, like stress chemicals and things like that. And I've actually had people in my practice come out with physical health issues. We call them somatic symptoms too. They've actually had real health issues as a result of mental health. And so it's no wonder how many people are sick in this world, because they're not doing well and they're not balanced and they don't know how to appreciate the person that they've been created to be. And if they had a clear understanding of how they operated, and they had a lot more understanding of how much more freedom they would have from truly appreciating themselves, they would be able to break their chains. But right now, it's like kind of like the Matrix. They're kind of plugged into a really shitty simulator, like a really shitty go to work, like 9 to 5 it, like give your soul to, the corporate overlords and let them literally like sacrifice people in the name of an unholy creature. Yeah, that's like where we're at right now. And so, yeah, magic's an interesting place to be, especially with all the things happening, and reminding yourself that this world is made up by man because we made it up. Like we made up the way this house looks. We decided that this was the way it should look, or we, as in the people that we are not, are telling us this is the new thing. This is it. This is it. And it's all being crafted and made with nefarious purposes, right? You have to ask yourself, why are some things so cheap and easy and effective to get? Because they need them in people's view. They need like phones. Like there's a whole thing where you can get a phone for pretty much, I think for free, really. They're called Obama phones. And they want people to have access to these things so that they can easily manipulate people into believing whatever they want to, because as you think you're gaining a freedom, you're actually just gaining propaganda. And so the propaganda is not that big of a deal because you just see it as what? It's just like an ad or whatever, right? But that's putting subliminal messaging, and they know that they can like track your data, track your information, track who you are. And so they make it accessible and easy to collect these things, because again, at the end of the day, they are going to have an advantage, right? So they give you something that's quote unquote free, but you're really selling part of your soul, or like your freedom, to this object, right? So now your freedom is being tied to this thing. And why would they do that? Because again, that's why it's free. So your freedom for this free device. So they see your energy and your attention just as valuable as a phone with data. So yeah, you're not worth health insurance, but you're worth the phone, because a phone is easier to, again, control the masses, control people, like blindfold people. Like, what's the difference between a blindfold and this? I mean, you're pretty blindfolded, and if anything, like add like a little hypnosis thing here, and you might as well just be in a blindfold. So, in a lot of ways, that is how the system works. It is a blindfold, and you're waking up, and you're seeing the system for what it is now that you are away from the phone. But as long as they have that in your face and they're offering it to people for free, you can keep people under a certain level of control and comfort. And it's like they say, the give them circus and give them bread. And so these are the circus, right? And the bread is the basic, like EBT, like here's your most basic necessities. Like, keep giving people like their fast food, right? Like their access to their one burger a day or whatever, or their like whatever. And now you can even use like EBT at fast food, right? So it's again like feeding a system, like feeding the unhealthy, feeding the beast inside. And yeah, they get to take advantage of people willingly giving away their energy. And again, that is why we live in an artificial world, because people have forgotten their own worth. They've decided that other people's opinion of their worth is more valuable than their own. And we continue to suffer with the same ongoing issues because people have, again, lost the way. And that's why Christ calls it the way, because you have to find the way back. And the way back is, again, through letting go of knowing, letting go of finding fulfillment, like just finding peace and letting the universe show you things. Let the universe help you find fulfillment and guide you. And as long as you will let the universe help you operate, you will always find your needs. You will always complete with your fulfillments, because at the end of the day, they are tailored to you, and they're coming to you for you from the outside divine. And that all came from just understanding patience, which is the last thing they want from you, which is why they stress you out. They put bills. They know, look, anxiety is about, again, the three things: independence, future, and self respect. What are they always hounding on you? Do you work out enough? Do you do this stuff? Da, da, da. What about this? Oh, your future, blah, blah, blah. What's this? Da, 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 da. They know, right? What if you lose independence? What if you have to move in? What if you da, 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 da? Like, they know what affects these things. So instead of the government saying, yo, like, we know this thing fucks our people up, how do we help them operate with this? That's literally the driving force they're using. Okay, they used scare tactics to motivate you. They don't use like motivational tactics, they use scare tactics. And so that's the type of warfare that we're in right now, is that you are being programmed to be scared all the time. And that's why it's hard for people to have natural confidence, because the entire system is scaring you all the time. Literally, like even just the idea of a boogeyman, the boogeyman coming to get you. And they feed into these things, they feed into the negative, they feed in because they at the end benefit. They get to scare you and be your savior. Isn't that convenient? The people that are scaring you are also saving you. Wow, that's amazing, huh? It's a fascination that they get to call all the shots. They get to call everything what it is, and you can't question it, because they are the leading force of belief. Shall I say more? Shows you where we're at with the world, right? That even if you question them, instead of saying, "Hey, we can see your concerns, like we'll work with you," no, you're not allowed to question them because they're the truth. Not the truth, but their truth. So just remember that, guys. All right, guys, thanks for coming along today. I had a pleasure talking, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Keep up that magic, keep up that strength, keep working on your vessel. Enjoy the game for what it is, and we'll talk another day. Later, guys.